Welcome back to MVP 210. Please enjoy this interview that I had with the Honorable Ron Rangel at his podcast, Beyond the Gavel. Thank you.
Disclaimer. Judge Ron Rangel is providing this podcast and website for educational purposes only, as well as to give the public general information regarding topics related to the criminal justice system. The views, thoughts, and opinions of his guest speakers are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Judge Rangel. All rise. You are now listening to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel, educating the public and expanding mindsets. Subscribe on our website, beyondthegavelpodcast.com, or your favorite podcast platform for more of the latest podcast episodes and updates.
Welcome to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel. I'm your host. Today in the studio, we have Jason Mata. Now, Jason Mata is originally from San Antonio, Texas, born and bred, graduated from Fox Tech High School. He's been married 27 years. He has 3 children and 3 grandchildren. Family has been in the military. He's the director of the Advocates Youth Program, Inc. Now, I've worked with Jason for quite a long time doing different political things. And I know, Jason, that you used to work with the Haven for Hope Board.
Yes, sir. One time.
Welcome, Jason Mata.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for this opportunity so I can hopefully speak a little bit about the Advocates Youth Program Incorporated. It was originally the Advocates Social Services. And then we have another nonprofit, those are 501c3s. It's called the Advocates Boxing Youth Program. But in the last couple of years, we've been restructuring. We're at the point now where we're going to kind of combine the 2 nonprofits and we're going to just name it the Advocates Youth Program Incorporated. We're taking the boxing out of it because we're looking to expand the program. We use boxing as a means to work with at-risk youth, but we also know that, we also want to try other sports too. Every sport of soccer, basketball, even football, they all have benefits and we want to kind of tap into that. So we don't want to limit the program by calling it a boxing youth program anymore. And then, when you use the word boxing, sometimes people have a misconception, that it's a brutal sport, but really the definition of boxing is hit and not get hit. So we're not, we don't teach kids to be brutal. We try to show them the art of boxing. And with that comes a lot of discipline too. So we're using it that way. And again, we're a nonprofit organization that for many years was helping with food disbursement, right? So we had a lot of, my dad was the head of the organization for many, many years, started in 1979. And his whole thing was combating hunger, right? And my dad was a professional fighter. So it was only natural that we at some point incorporated this youth program focusing on boxing. But really the program has evolved quite a bit in the last 24 years. We focus on the physical, but we also focus on mental wellness as well.
You've been referred to as a community activist.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it's just basically it means a person or an individual who takes interest in their community, right? And whatever area. For me, the area has been safety, right, of the community. It's been
working to keep the community safe.
Yes, sir. And working with at-risk youth. I have a lot of personal experience with bullying and even with abuse as a child. When that happens to a person, especially a kid, and they don't get it treated like with counseling or anything, it has ill effects as they're growing up. They can become easy targets for bullying. There's times where people can get into self-medication, like with alcohol and drugs. And so that's just, that takes an individual into dark places, right? That's why I work hard on this, because I feel that if we can help kids who have been through stuff like that, even poverty, even just kids who are poor, who maybe don't have opportunities. And of course, I'm talking about 45 years ago, right? Now it's a little different. There's more opportunities for kids, but still there's a lot of kids who are vulnerable right now. Right. And so when I see individuals like that, or they come across, like a program, then when I'm able to interact with them and use this boxing to help them out of that kind of stuff, then that's, for me, that's what drives me personally. And to me, that's what an activist is.
You've been an activist for a long time.
Yes, sir.
When did you get started?
I started working with my dad at the Advocates in 1996. But around 1999 is when I really got involved. That's when I had a little knack for it.
Your base, so to speak, is on the west side.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
You want to describe the west side of San Antonio and where your particular base has been, just in case folks don't really know what that's like.
Yeah, so basically the agency was, for many years, 1 mile west of downtown, right? So we're
directly west, right?
Yeah, directly west, inner city. It's been identified in different ways, near inner city, near west side, right? So basically west of downtown, not more than 1 mile, but our services reaches about maybe 5 to 10 miles from there. So like when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about, families that we work with, and the ones that are more likely going to be using our services are within that area. It's known as Prospect Hill as well. And I was the chairperson of the Prospect Hill Neighborhood Association for like 20 years. Not the chairman, but I was involved with the board for that long.
When I first started talking to you, you were involved with Prospect Hills Neighborhood Association.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And what are some of the things that your particular association focused on?
Well, most of it was public safety. Not only the crime, but traffic, pedestrian issues, not having enough signage, enough lighting, all that stuff. Any traffic was a big thing, but that was primarily what the neighborhood association was focusing on because of where we're located at the crime base that's there.
I've been involved in a lot of neighborhood association meetings. I've always gone to a lot of them. I've always gone to talk about what we do in the courthouse and what's happening currently. Generally speaking, there's a lot of folks that show up and give reports to members of the neighborhood association. Is that right?
That's correct.
For instance, there's a safe officer.
Yeah.
What is that?
So safe officers are police officers that are assigned to specific areas. They communicate directly with neighborhood associations and residents. So those are the ones you'd be calling if you have an issue, maybe like with your neighbor, like, I don't know, maybe the neighbor's dog barks all night. So they're kind of the go-between person, but they actually come out to your residents and they'll be more of the point of contact.
So it's like the conduit for San Antonio Police Department with the neighborhood.
That's correct.
So it's that direct person to person, work in the beat kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly. And so they will relay a lot of the concerns to the guys on the beat and other units. So they're the liaisons type. And it's, to me, in my opinion, is this work very, very effective. So I know that I think San Antonio just got a grant and they're going to hire 50 more officers. Hopefully safe officers will be part of that plan.
So with safe officers, you're having an opportunity to discuss whatever crime issues exist in the community. You feel like you have a voice that's being heard. You're working directly hand in hand with the police department. So then there's a relationship that's developing. What other types of folks come in? I know that I've seen like folks from the city council that come in to talk about what's happening with the city.
Yeah. Well, we've had people from the county, right? The bear appraisal, the tax assessor, people from TxDOT, right? Because of the issues with like Culebra Road, we actually did a petition. Well, we actually had 2 meetings to get Culebra Road addressed, some of the concerns there. And so that started off with the state rep, came in, the city council people, some other city officials, and then TxDOT. So the state was there as well. You even had the state police come to our meetings before.
So neighborhood associations are effective at relaying information regarding public safety and neighborhood upkeep and things of that nature from the different governmental agencies and resources over to y'all, and then y'all can express yourselves with that.
That's correct.
Very nice. So you were a neighborhood association president?
Yeah, I was involved with the board for many, many years, vice president and president.
And then after that?
Well, with the advocates, that was my employment, right? So I sat on different boards and ran different organizations. At one time, I was running 3 nonprofit organizations.
Can you give us an example of what a nonprofit organization would be that you were involved with? Yeah,
well, we'll talk about the Advocates Boxing Program, right? That's a nonprofit. So, you have to, running a nonprofit is very difficult, right? It's like, so a lot of times you don't have the staff that you need to deal with the board. Sometimes your boards are not active.
You got to have a board with a nonprofit.
Yes, sir. And sometimes, I wouldn't say they're not active. They're not active enough. Boards, their job is to get funding for the organization. Bottom line, get funding and direct how's the money spent and make sure that it's being effective, right? The work that they're doing. Good board members are hard to find sometimes, right? And so when you don't have that working for you, then the directors, like myself, they have that pressure of having to go find the funding, fill in the gaps of what the board might not be doing, or fill in the gaps of staff that you don't have, right? So, nonprofits can be very difficult to work with because if they're relatively small, then they may be small, but the job is not small. So there has to be a gap that has to be filled. I remember one of my friends told me, Bill Anderson, I hope he's doing well in heaven right now. He's a very good guy. I met him at the Haven for Hope, on the board of the Haven for Hope. He told me, well, when you need a secretary and you don't have a secretary, guess what? And I'm like, what? He goes, you're the secretary. That's right. You know what I mean? And so, well, in my case, I'm the secretary for myself and for my dad, who was the director. So it was kind of funny, but he's right though. When you don't have those tools, then you have to do them yourself. So they can be very, very difficult to be effective, right? So, but at one time I was running 3 nonprofit organizations. It was very, very difficult, but it did help me to grow as a person, and it gave me a lot of experience. So right now, I'll fast forward from then to right now, I have a lot of experience because of that. So it amazes me sometimes how I come up with solutions to whatever it is, how I think about things, how you can kind of foresee what the end is going to be because of experience, because of that. So I'm very grateful that I was given those opportunities.
When you're running a nonprofit and you're looking for funding, what are some of the sources that you go to? I would imagine you'd go to the county. I'd imagine you'd go to the city and the state.
We're considered, any nonprofit that is not part of the city or the county, they're considered outside agencies. Mm-hmm. And just that term alone, kind of like a turnoff, right?
Kind of exclusive, right?
Yeah. So when you're an outside agency, sometimes you're limited in how much you can receive. And I hate to talk like that, but I always seen through the times of getting involved with all this stuff and the population that we helped and our targeted population, how it helped and how it could help. I see the nonprofits that I run, especially the advocates now, that they're more of a federal level. We've been trying to get federal funds, but those are very, very difficult to get. I've aimed for those before. Like I've actually applied for, and I feel that that's the level that we're at. Appreciate all the help we received from city and county and philanthropists, local philanthropists, like Mr. Bill Green helped us quite a bit. But the work that we do and what we're trying to accomplish is more federal. And that's why I ran for Congress in 2020. Because at that point, I was like, I'm only going to be able to get that if I'm actually sitting in that position. And that's why I went for it. And it was a great experience. I didn't win, but it was a great experience.
So you ran Congress. You also ran for another position.
City Council.
So what was it like to be a candidate in those kind of races?
Well, I'll tell you that the Congress one, I really had my heart set on that. I mean, I feel like that's where I need to be at, right? So, and my mother was alive still, and she was helping me get signatures, and my dad was helping me a little bit. Although my dad, he was good friends with the guy who was currently sitting at that seat, right? Lloyd Doggett. So he was half-hearted in it, right? And, he's the one that encouraged me to run. But when I was running, like when I signed up and all that, I got the signature. He was like, wow, you're actually doing it. I was like, yeah, well, you're the one that encouraged me to do it. You know what I mean? Now, can't put me back now. You know what I mean? So, but my mother was really into it and I really felt good about that. And I had my heart set on that one. But the city council one, my mother had passed. My dad was real sick. As a matter of fact, my dad passed away 2 months after the election. So my heart wasn't really in that election at all.
Yeah, that's the thing about running for office, right? You really got to have good family support, good community support behind you.
Yeah, big time.
You don't run by yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And one thing that I saw your wife was out there quite a bit for you.
A lot, yeah. Yeah, she was seeing me when I was like very, very disappointed at times. And I remember one day I got home and I said, you know what, Rachel, just forget about it. Like we have signs in the back of the truck. Just forget today. Just, sleep it off or, I'll forget about today. And she said, no, we're going to go. So she dragged me out of the house and we put some signs and all that. So that encouraged me,
Yeah.
But, and then I started working too hard. I was like, you know what? Like you're doing too much work. There's 11 people running. The chances of me winning are going to be very, very slim. So let's go through the emotions, but let's not kill ourselves with this.
For somebody who hasn't lived that life, the experience that you and I have had of running for office, how would you explain it to them?
I would tell them that one, prepare yourself for a long, drawn out period of when you sign up to the actual election.
Right.
There's going to be people pulling at you left and right. There's a lot of organizations, a lot of agencies, a lot of groups that want you to fill out like a questionnaire. They'll want to get you on their event, at their event as a member of the panel. So be ready for all that stuff. So it's going to be a long, whatever amount of days that you're involved with that, prepare for that.
It's long and grueling.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a different experience.
Yeah. For those that are attorneys, I always tell them, imagine that trial. When you're in trial, you don't sleep, you don't eat very well. You're very focused on running. You're very, your time is very time intensive, right? Imagine a trial that never ends.
Yeah.
it goes on and on and on and on for many, many months. Yeah. Is that what it's like for you?
That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
I just won't. You get to a point where you just want it to end. Like, man, how many more weeks do we got? 2 weeks? I can't wait, And so, like, you just want it to end. I mean, whatever the results, everybody wants to win, but you get to a point where you just want it to be over with. You know what I mean?
Right.
So prepare for that.
And so the community that you ran in, the community that the Advocates is located in, we talked about it being inner city, near downtown. What's the demographics look like there? You said it's a high crime area?
Yeah, it's a...
what does that mean?
Well, right now in some of that area, there's a huge street drug problem, illegal drug problem. Back 15 years ago, I would say that the worst problem was like cocaine, right? Crack cocaine. But now the street people are making the drug, right? Like they're making what is iced. They're making it, and so they can get on this high, right, under the influence of a drug for a lot less money and for a longer period of time. And it's destroying them.
It's always been dangerous, right? Drugs are dangerous, illicit drugs. And when they produce it themselves, they become even more insidious, right?
That's right.
And so is that kind of what you see in the streets of the areas that you've worked in?
Yeah, and it's progressed. It's progressed quite a bit. And so, again, as someone who cares about their community, who was an activist trying to see good, positive changes in the community, that's why I ran for office, because I wanted to change that. And I wanted to put an end to that as much as the position would allow me to do it.
I mean, for folks listening in, I'm sure you get asked all the time, how do you do that? How do you change that culture in a community that has been strifed with issues for a long time? Well, neglected, right? Neglected by government.
I'm going to tell you what can inspire people. What can inspire people is seeing an individual or individuals show that they care, right? Show that they have genuine care or concern for them. And I believe that can inspire people. So
that human connection.
That's right. Because then they're like, because a lot of people, they've ever given up in life, right? People who are under the influence and they're just kind of going down, spiraling down real fast. They want an excuse to be like that. They don't see any hope. And so I believe that when they see, groups, individuals that show that they really care for them, by trying to make those changes, trying to let them know, look, I understand where you're coming from. And again, because of my background, my personal background, I believe that a unique piece to it.
Right.
So when I pray to God, and I just started doing this the last maybe 5-6 months of my life, I pray to God and I ask, and first of all, I thank him and I ask him for forgiveness, but I thank him for everything that has happened to me in my life from the day I was born to right now, all the bad stuff, because it gave me this different perspective. And I think that, I believe that some people out in the community who can see that it helped them, especially like with the boxing program, because I don't do it. I do it. My dad was one wanted to do it for like, hey, let's go have somebody win the Golden Gloves. And he was a 3-time Golden Gloves champion. So was my uncle. So I understand that. My dad was also a social worker, but I had a different drive for it, to inspire people to deal with those issues if they have them and then move on with life. Not in a bad way, but let's get back to what you wanted to be when you were first a little kid. You ask a little kid, what do you want to be in life? You know what they're going to say? Astronaut. I wanted to be a pilot. Whatever it is, they'll come out, I want to be an attorney, I want to be a judge. Then bad things happen. And guess what? They're not thinking about that no more. So it's like, let's get them back to where they were at when they were like a small kid asked, what do you want to do in life? Let's take them back to that.
All right, Jason, I'm enjoying our conversation. Let's take a quick Q&A break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
This is Q&A with Judge Ron Rangel. Submit your question today at BeyondTheGavelPodcast.com.
Welcome to the Q&A break. We have a question. I'm going to read it out, Jason, for our listeners. Do you believe the current system of using the jail to induce guilty pleas is unjust? And should judges play a proactive role in ensuring defendants are given a speedy trial? I think the question is more based on conditions of bail, right? When somebody gets arrested, law enforcement takes them over directly to the jail. There's a magistrate who's a judge who is appointed to overlook it, whatever it is that's coming in. They see what are the issues related to this case, What is the danger to the community, potentially? What is the danger to self, potentially? How violent is this alleged offense? What is it that we need to do to ensure that this person follows through on being safe and showing up to court? So the idea there is when people are accused of a crime, they should have an opportunity to come out, not only to try to live efficiently as they can, to try to live appropriately, but also make sure that they show up to court. And so the idea that folks that are arrested and have to wait in jail before their case comes up to trial is one that has been in the media quite a bit. I think in San Antonio, I think we've done a really good job in making sure that people that are accused of nonviolent crimes have an opportunity to come out while their case is pending, come out of custody to make sure that they can continue to work and thrive and support their families, live life while their case is pending. But the issue then becomes, what about an individual who's accused of a very violent crime? And so the idea that that person maybe should or should not be in custody is an ongoing discussion, and it's one for the folks to continue to talk about in hopes that maybe we could find a system that would be more fair. All right, let's get to the second question. Should judges play a proactive role in ensuring defendants are giving a speedy trial? Obviously, a judge is a referee, right? A lot of people sometimes confuse judges with prosecutors. They think, the judge that is bringing forth this case, the reality of it is judges don't know anything about the cases that come before them until there's a trial or there's some sort of hearing on whether or not the person is guilty or innocent. And so a judge can't play a proactive role in plea negotiations, but a judge can always play a proactive role in ensuring that cases are brought to trial as soon as possible in a way justice is done. I say that because there's a lot of times that cases come before the court. The case may seem old, but let's say the case was just indicted by a grand jury, that the district attorney's office then is still awaiting pieces of evidence. Maybe if they say, if you make us go to trial now, we're not going to have this evidence available to us that we've been waiting on because of backlogs in the states for something like, let's say, DNA testing or some other type of reports that they need from policing agencies. So as much as judges can ensure a speedy trial, it's also important that judges can make sure that that trial is fair.
You mentioned violent and nonviolent, so I agree with you on that. But I think that that's a hard yes or no question, because it can't. There's individuals who are repeat offenders, right? And I believe that has to come into play, because I think that, I know a lot of people are talking about it because there's been some unfortunate incidents, but I believe those individuals were repeat offenders. Like, I think they had a lengthy criminal record, and I think that needs to come into play.
That makes sense. Thank you for helping me with those questions, Jason. Y'all keep asking those questions. Let's get back to the show.
This is Q&A with Judge Ron Rangel. Submit your question today at BeyondTheGavelPodcast.com.
Welcome back. I'm here talking with Jason Mata. So you mentioned your dad. Your dad was well known in this community, right?
Yeah.
You want to tell us about your dad?
Yeah, Carlos Charlie Mata, right?
Charlie Mata, that's right.
So he always told me that he got a good name through sports, through the boxing. I think he did a little bit of baseball.
He was a professional boxer?
Yeah, and he was a boxing manager. He put on a couple of professional boxing events. He was actually elected to something called City Models. It's almost like part of like a city council, kind of like what they do. One of the biggest things they did was build a bridge at a couple of the creeks there on Perez. I think it connected Perez and Ruiz Street, if I'm not mistaken, on Calaveras. And that was a big safety concern. So, because, emergency vehicles had to go all the way around. So it was, they bridged that gap. And then he ran for city council, and he got, I think, 13,000. I still have him there at the house, 13,000 votes, but that was more like, so if you ran for District 5, you could get votes in District 2 and 1. It was like a city.
It was an at-large.
Yeah, it was at-large, yeah. So he would always say, hey, I got 13,000 votes. I was like, yeah, that was a different day. I mean, I spent $5. Like, you spent $5, got that many votes? It's like, yeah. I was like, wow, dude, like, that's pretty good, But nowadays you can't do that, though. It's a different day. So, yeah, he was the founder of the Advocates Social Services back in 1979. He grew up very, very poor. Him and his brothers and sisters and mom and dad, they worked in the farms And he said that his bed was like, I think it was like a bag of cotton, and they would just like sleep in there. And so they were poor.
So, you grew up in San Antonio?
Yeah, he was from San Antonio, but they would work out in the, out in the, like in the countryside, right? And that's why he focused a lot on hunger, right? A lot on hunger, like a lot of food disbursements. He did a lot of that. I think the Advocates was the first organization to give out the government cheese and butter.
Very nice.
And he told me, yeah, we beat out an organization in California by like 5 hours or 3 hours, something like that. He used the boxer's mentality and everything he did, which was me first. I wish San Antonio would recognize that stuff that he did for San Antonio, because in certain areas he and the group put San Antonio on the map. Like that was a big thing for San Antonio, getting the cheese and the butter, and they ran it for almost 2 years. And so he did, quite a bit of things for the community.
I grew up with a little bit of that. Yeah.
The cheese.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your father started the Advocates. You indicated that he was a social worker by profession.
Yes.
What is it about boxing that I've noticed a lot of nonprofits try to get youth involved in as a benefit to them, as a benefit at-risk youth?
It's based on discipline. The number one thing is discipline. So there's a lot of disciplines in boxing.
Self-discipline, kind of.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what I tell anybody. If we were training right now and you came and told me, hey, teach me how to box, right? The first thing I'm going to tell you is, you see this clock, this timer, and you hear the timer, that's your first discipline. You got to learn when to start, and it tells you when to stop. So learn that. That's like your first boss here. Like that's your first discipline. Learn that, because when you're in a boxing match, there's a time in and a time out. So you got to get used to that. Or now, you're not going to be time out and you're still throwing punches at the guy. You have to learn that. And the other thing is you got to learn how to stay focused on what you're doing. So you're not going to go to the ring and then look out at the crowd and start waving to, hey, Tia, I'll be with you later. You're not going to be doing that. So that's the first disciplines of boxing. And it depends how far you're going to go with it. If you're doing it just for exercise, it's great. Maybe lose a little bit of weight, that's great. But if you're going to compete, then that's a whole different type of discipline. You got to eat right. You got to sleep right. A lot of people wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go do their road work, like jogging and all that. So that's on them, Through the years, I can tell how I've dealt with. I have changed a lot in how I do the training and all that. I kind of like let people know this is what you got to do. I'll give you a list of things, and I'm here to teach you these things, and then I'm going to teach you how to box. Right. But I'm not going to be holding your hand on these things. Like I expect you to be able to do these things when you come here. One of them is like a hand wrap. Teach them how to do the hand wrap. And then when they leave, I say, remember, when you come back, you better have the hand wrap on. So when you're home, be practicing. When you're on the way, when your mom or dad is driving you to the practice, be putting it on, because I'm not going to be wasting time on you putting on your hand wrap. So kids, they like that. My dad always said kids like discipline. That's why they're here. They're here to learn, and they like it. And you got to make it fun and all that, but it's serious business. Remember, they're going to be competing. Somebody's going to be trying to knock their head off. And so you got to make sure they're ready for it.
So all the things that are important to be mentally, physically, emotionally healthy, those are the kind of things you teach through skills like boxing.
That's right. Yeah.
So how do you identify at-risk youth to work with?
The SISD, right, San Antonio Independent School District, on their website, it indicates there that 97.6% of their student body economically disadvantaged. To me, that's an at-risk youth. And then we'll go to other stuff. If a kid's being bullied at school, that's an at-risk youth. If a kid has mental disorder and has, God forbid, has tried to commit suicide or thinks, that's an at-risk youth. To answer your question real short, that website told me everything.
So what specifically would be the purpose of your program, The Advocates?
Specifically, it's for kids to be champions outside of the ring. That's specifically what it's set up for. So teaches kids how to box and how to compete if they want, but we want to structure them to be able to handle issues that they may be dealing with or they may be dealing with, like bullying, feeling like right now there's a lot of social anxiety going on with kids. And so we want to be able to help them deal with that.
What are age groups that you generally work with?
So we follow the guidelines of USA Boxing, and they start kids at 8 years old up to young adulthood, 19, 20, 21. But I've worked with kids as young as 5 years old.
Yeah, have you had some challenging individuals come in that you're looking at them going, it's going to take a lot of work to help this person gain self-esteem and the sort of positive attributes that you want to teach them?
Yeah, there has been some, but then on the other side of the coin, there's been some that initially would think, oh, I might have some issues with them, but no, they actually excelled in the training. They did well with the program, and their parents did well with the program too. So their parents got like really involved and became, part of committees and stuff like that. So yeah, it kind of works both ways, right? And then you have some that have a lot of potential, but they lack self-discipline. you can only go so far, right? But we've done the best that we could, I think.
So you want to give us a couple of success stories? Maybe somebody came in and you took them in for the purpose of helping them grow and become better people. And
yeah, there was, and it was spotlighted on Fox News, KVB, one female. She was 18 years old and she weighed, I think, 360 pounds and she lost 80 pounds, I believe. So, she had her outlook in life changed because of her weight loss, right? So, that helped her quite a bit. And there was also an individual, a male student that lost about 50 pounds and he just changed his whole outlook. He came to me one day and said, "Hey, coach, you know what? This ain't working out." And I'm like, "What do you mean? The training?" He said, "No, I think I might just quit school." And I'm like, "Quit school? But aren't you a senior?" He's like, "Yeah, but I just don't see the purpose anymore." And 3 months later, after he dropped his weight, he graduated from school. I mean, he stayed in school, he graduated, just changed his whole mentality, the way he thought of himself. So that's that as far as the health. But as far as academically, there's been, I've been doing this so long that individuals that were 14 years old, now they're, late 20s, 30s, have their own families and they're successful. One thing I like to see is families. Like, I love to see families, right? I just, that just brings a lot of joy and when I see that brings joy, to whatever struggle we may have encountered running this program.
That's one thing, not always, but often enough. That's one thing that is lacking with individuals that are caught in the criminal justice system. They don't have that family support.
Yeah.
So what could we do in San Antonio and other places around the country to encourage family support as such that would help young individuals, young children, young adults grow and be successful in the way that you're describing?
Programming is one way. Making sure that there's programs out there that can work with these kids.
Do they all have to be nonprofits? I guess the city, the county can have some organizations.
Yeah, so there are some nonprofits. We worked with the juvenile department at one time. So we had a contract with them to work with kids who are already in the system, but they were already going to get out. Like, I think it was their last 6 months of being on probation. And they called it an enrichment program, I believe. But we were like the boxing part of it, component of it. There was an art organization, and then I think music. But I want to tell you what I really believe about all that is preventive, right? I believe that if we focus more on prevention, that we'll have more success. So I developed what I call the PI approach. That's because there was a time where many elected officials were talking about addressing the issues holistically, right? So I figured, if we're going to look holistically, to me, that was like the PI, right? So PI means prevention, intervention, and enrichment. So the focus one should be prevention. Like, how do we work with these kids before they get into problems, right? Before they get into the juvenile system. And again, I think it's through programming. I think it's through having available programs that are kind of set up like this boxing program, right? That are not just the athletic part of it, but also have wraparound services attached to it, or at least referral services. I also sat on a committee called, it was the Bexar County Mental Health Task Force, right? With Yolanda Ortega. I got involved because of my daughter. And so, it came from, my family was dealing with that.
Yeah.
And so I met Miss Yolanda Ortega, who was the chairwoman of the Bexar County Mental Health Task Force. So through that, I learned about the resources. So when I worked with the kid at the boxing program, it was easy to connect them to other resources. And so that's what makes it unique. And I believe that we need more programs like that.
You mentioned earlier that you ran for city council. So I imagine that your particular area where the advocates has been located is District 5 in San Antonio.
Yes, sir.
The zip code there, 78207. I was reading somewhere, there was another individual that had a conversation with me. We were talking about 78207 is really one of the economically most disadvantaged zip codes in the country. What can we do to help, apart from some of the things that you're doing? What else could we do to help that type of an environment foster growth and foster essentially a good environment for children to grow up and be raised?
Well, it's dealing with, to me, the most prevalent problem, which is the illegal drug use.
Because it's systemic, right? It's something that's
and
generations and decades.
Yeah, and kids see this stuff and they're exposed to this stuff. And I believe that, some individuals, some kids, and even adults kind of feel like, well, this is where we're at. This is how it is. And they accept it. So I would deal with that problem first. And I believe that you can create an environment that is a little more cleaner, where individuals are thriving, where individuals care about their community, then I think that that community can be successful. But it's hard to do when you walk outside and you see homeless drug addicts doing drugs right there or doing whatever. I don't want to get too horrific with the stuff, but I've seen a lot of stuff and it's bad for our community.
It's not a one-day turnaround, right? Or a 1 month or 1 year turnaround. It takes time.
It does, but I believe if we prioritize that we can make some impact. I just don't see that kind of effort right now.
What are some long-term goals that you see your nonprofit, the Advocates, accomplishing?
Well, I can tell you, we have a lot of needs, right? We're trying to expand our program, but to expand, we need facilities, adequate facilities. So we need a big building that we can do the youth services, right? Maybe where we can do some events like boxing show events, So long term is trying to find those resources, trying to find a building that, maybe we can get donated to us, try to get steady funding so that we could hire staff, support staff. Mm-hmm. And those are just things that every nonprofit needs to be successful. So we're trying to do that, but I'm going to tell you about a unique, and I'm going to call it unique because I haven't heard of any other boxing program doing it. So what I'm trying to develop right now this is all COVID related, right? This is post-COVID. So right now kids are having a lot of social anxiety. There's a lot of kids being homeschooled right now. A lot of kids are not doing well in the school setting, right? Hopefully they will, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And so what I'm trying to develop, I already have it written out and everything. I'm trying to do a program for homeschool kids where they would come train during the times where they would normally go to PE or recess, right? And I would have 4 groups already identified, boys and girls, right? So age group from 8 to 11. Boys would be one session. The next one would be the 8, 11 girls. And then the next day would be the older kids. In that formula, they would get about 10 sessions a month. And I'm trying to develop that program. Like it's there. I just haven't implemented it yet. But I think that's a unique program and it's answering the call.
Well, Jason, I've enjoyed having this conversation with you. Are there any last thoughts that you would have for our listeners?
Yes. I do want to let the audience know that I have a YouTube channel. It's called MVP210, which is Mata Boxing Promotion 210. It does, I do talk a lot about boxing in general. I give professional analysis of upcoming fights and even a post analysis after the fights. But I do have training sessions on there. Kids that I'm working with are on there. It's a form of free boxing lesson because it's like a virtual thing. You can go there and you'll see that while I'm coaching a kid, I'm also coaching in a way where for the audience. So like they're learning without me even being there. And I think that's a good thing for everyone. But I do have a couple of videos where I talk extensively about the program. So I would encourage people to go to that YouTube channel, MVP210, and watch the videos. If you're interested in boxing, it's there. I'm even training on those too. So you could see a 51-year-old man still trying to make shit happen. And so be encouraged by that. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's about it. As far as the nonprofits and community activism and being involved, if you have a niche for helping your community, then get involved with an organization or again, create your own. Right now in this day and age, people are creating their own. I created my own YouTube channel. I mean, I started a year ago, like maybe about 16 months ago, right? It's never too late to do things.
Now, boxing is something you and I have in common, right? You know that I've worked as a professional boxing ring announcer.
Yeah.
And I may have told you that folks in law school always have to write a paper. A lot of pay attention to this. There's always a paper that you have to write in law school that theoretically could be published. The paper that I wrote on was related to boxing regulations and how safe are our regulations and what can we do to strengthen them.
Wow, great.
And so those are important topics. I've always enjoyed boxing. I think lots of reasons that you and I have been able to develop a relationship over the years. I knew your dad for a long time, and I know the advocacy that he brought. I know for you, it's been a lifelong experience to be involved in trying to improve your community. So, we thank you for that. Absolutely. We thank you for the words of encouragement that you've had for those that want to follow in those footsteps of the Mata family and creating something to be a benefit to the community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My family appreciates that. And what encourages us and helps us is when individuals like yourself, when you show interest or acknowledge it, that helps because we don't get too much of that.
Well, thank you, Jason. I've enjoyed talking to you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Again, thank you for having me. And you and your staff are doing a great job. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. We've reached the end of this episode. We've been here for over a year now. Lots of episodes. I feel really good about where the podcast is going. I look forward to another year and many years after that. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
You've been listening to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel. Join us in the next 2 weeks where we are educating the public and expanding mindsets. Head to our website, beyondthegavelpodcast.com, or your favorite podcast platform to subscribe to the latest episodes and updates.